Hello, everyone. Welcome to Avaya's Overcoming Narcissistic Abuse curriculum. I'm Andy Anderson. My partner Ike Allen and I are teachers, mentors, and the co-owners of Avaya University. Avaya is the creator of over 1,000 books, films, courses, teachings, and other supportive resources. Thanks so much for being here. Our fellow teacher, Sherry Gaba, is here today to talk with us about the narcissist and codependent dance. Sherry is a licensed psychotherapist and life coach who helps people cope with addictions, trauma, and mental health issues. As a leading expert on addiction and recovery, Sherry's TV appearances include VH1's Celebrity Rehab, CNN, Inside Edition, Access Live, E! News, and many more. She has also been featured in Cosmopolitan, Women's World, the LA Times, Thrive Global, New York Post, and other leading publications. She's also a best-selling author and maintains a private practice in Westlake Village, California, is the editor of Recovery Today magazine, and we have also been honored to have Sherry on as a featured teacher on our Overcoming Codependency and our Breaking Free from Abandonment and Betrayal curriculum. So thanks so much for coming back and hanging out with us again, Sherry.
Oh, I love it. And I love you. And I love that, you're putting something out about this subject because, a lot of people are really, dealing with this kind of thing. A lot of people don't even realize what it means to be in a narcissistically abusive relationship. So I'm glad you're at the forefront.
Yeah, well, thank you. And yeah, this is such a needed topic. It's something that's been coming up over and over the years. So I'm so glad that we're getting to cover it and that you're willing to say yes and talk with us about it. So let's talk about, in your work, I know you talk about 3 stages of this narcissistic relationship with a codependent person. So could you talk about what those are?
So right off the bat, a narcissist and a codependent are just easily attracted to each other. They're like 2 magnets and they will find each other in a room. And so that's why I wanted this particular lesson to be about that particular relationship. So the 3 stages to the relationship is, well, first stage is when the narcissist chooses their prey based on what that person can do for them. In other words, they're looking to supply their narcissistic need. They call that a narcissistic supply, and it's there to build up their self-esteem. And narcissists will choose successful and attractive individuals because dating a desirable person really makes the narcissistic look really good and desirable. Later, I'll get into my own experience with a narcissist, and his constant thing that he would say is, it's all about looking good. So it's all about really looking good to people on the outside. They're often charming, and in the beginning, they'll dote on their love object or the codependent, and they'll put them up on a pedestal, and they'll just chase them addictively. And this is exactly what a codependent falls for, because it meets their need to be validated and be accepted, to be acknowledged, to be seen, to be heard. So once the narcissist has conquered the codependent, the second stage begins. And this is when the pedestal breaks and the narcissist starts blaming their partner for all the tiny hiccups and problems in the relationship. And they become really critical, overcritical, and they become moody. And this is an attempt to really ultimately avoid bonding, dealing with the fact that they struggle with intimacy issues. They really actually fear true intimacy. And the narcissist will pick fights and create problems. They'll build an emotional wall, a blockade around them, so no one can get really too close or really know who they really are. And the codependent will be sitting there going, oh my God, like confused and dazed, not knowing what happened, because during the first stage, they were addictively obsessed with them. So they're saying, what happened here? And they desperately want to go back to that stage where they were worshipped and adored, because that's how they get their supply. That's how they get their codependent supply. Mm-hmm. The codependent becomes addicted to the highs of the relationship, always seeking attention and denying the lows, always wanting to go back to that early phase of the relationship where they were being wooed. So this is another example of delusion, in this case, believing that all that alluring behavior the narcissist presented early on is really a true representation of who they are. Really, it isn't really who they are. And during the last stage of the relationship, the codependent keeps obsessively giving in the relationship in this desperate attempt to get that original addictive attention back, to get that original wooing and chasing, courting back. But it's to no avail. So before long, the codependent is really demeaning themselves. They're denying themselves to reclaim the attention they once got from the narcissist, and inevitably, though, the narcissist leaves for their next victim. So they sort of do what we call discarding of that codependent. So it's a perfect dance. You know, they're just, they fit.
Yes. Yeah. So like you've already kind of touched on this, but what exactly attracts one to the other? Like, why is it that codependents are tend to be so attracted like magnets to the narcissist? And why is it that the narcissist is so attracted to the codependent?
So you're right. There's this really dangerous dance for the codependent who already feels, really empty inside. She has this insatiable need to be filled up with love. They'll do anything to receive love. But for the narcissist, their partners are only objects who exist to gratify their needs, financial, probably not spiritual, but financial, emotional. And ironically, they're really the same thing. They're two sides of the same coin. They both have abandonment issues. Each of the other needs to fill the other one up. The codependent has this need to be adored, and the narcissist has a constant need to be revered, revered. So neither will ever get what they want. They'll never get what they need because their needs are literally insatiable. It's like, it's like pouring water in a glass and there's a hole on the bottom of the glass and it's just going to keep pouring out. They're never going to be able to meet those needs from the other person because we know that it's an inside job. You can't get what you need inside, and it's a spiritual job. And I'm just going to turn this phone off here.
No problem.
It's been off already, but oh well.
That's okay.
It's all, narcissism is messy. So neither will get what they want, and the situation is more dangerous for the codependent than it is for the narcissist because the codependent gives their partner the power to determine their worth. So all their self-esteem is based on, if you like me today, if you like me, I feel good about me. If you're giving me what I need, I feel good about me. If you're not, I feel horrible. So deep down, the narcissist is broken and powerless, but turns all of their insecurities back on the codependent. So they have that hole too, but instead of like owning that hole, that's why we say narcissists don't have a lot of empathy because they can't feel for another person. They don't have their brain, as a licensed psychotherapist, we know that their brain is not wired to be able to take in another person's point of view. They're very self-righteous. They always have to be right. And so what they do is they don't own their own insecurities. They put it back on the codependent. The codependent is assigned all the negative character traits that the narcissist is unwilling to own. And the narcissist does this by attacking and demeaning, criticizing the codependent, really putting the codependent off. They don't feel anchored. They're like, it's like having like the ground beneath them really crumbling away. There's no centeredness. They're just constantly, being taken off guard. Occasionally, though, to keep the codependent in the ring, the narcissist will throw a bone of attention, adoration to the codependent just to hook them back in. So what's insidious. I think the next question I was going to talk about is what insidious behavior do narcissists use to keep them dependent on them? But that was it.
Yeah. So that, yeah. Like what other things do they do? What other behaviors, manipulation techniques, what have you, do they do to, keep that codependent person in that codependent relationship, right?
Well, the most insidious behavior they use to keep codependents dependent on them is offering unsolicited help and making the codependent believe they aren't capable of dealing with their own issues. So they make them really, really dependent. And then this keeps the codependent very attached to the very end, believing that if they just, do these things for the narcissist, they will receive the love, the safety, and the protection they so desire.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. It's such an interesting thing. And I remember we talked about this when I first met you, when we talked about overcoming codependency, but just the lack of self-worth that so many codependents have and end up getting in, right. These relationships are repeating these patterns based on that kind of empty well of lack of self-esteem inside themselves. So, I love it if you mentioned this at the beginning that you have a personal story with a narcissist. So could you share for our audience a little bit more about that?
I will. What you're referring to is sometimes when codependents get into relationships, they're often attracted to addicts. And a lot of addicts have narcissistic traits. So we have to be really clear, like there are true narcissists, and then there are many that have narcissistic traits. The addict that was in my life certainly had traits. I would not call him a full-blown narcissist because at times he could show empathy. He could, he could look at your point of view, not all the time, not often. But a real narcissist, again, is so wired that they cannot possibly hear what you have to say. They are always right. They are self-righteous. So the story that I would like to share, my mother we lost my dad 5 years ago, and my mother, definitely an untreated codependent, and very codependent on my dad, who she was with for 60 years. Well, she started drinking heavily. Also, her alcoholism progressed. I think she was probably always an alcoholic, but it really progressed after my dad died. And so she went to this bar and she met this man, who, I mean, he was a true predator, con man, sociopath, and narcissist, and a true narcissist to the definition, to the APA definition. He lured my mother in, told my mother how beautiful she was. A lot of the way my mother, she was in her late 70s, and a lot of those women, they were only defined by having a man in their life or being adored. My mother was beautiful, and so getting attention, she got a lot of attention from my dad. She was used to this, being adored and getting attention. She had come from a very neglected childhood. So my father was her anchor. My dad was everything. She became very dependent on my dad, and my dad was pretty dependent on her in different ways. But this man came into her life and told her how gorgeous she was and how beautiful she was. He was homeless. He lived on a very small pension he was living in his car. And my mother also had the beginning stages of dementia. And we didn't really realize, just how off her reasoning was. We thought, oh, well, our mom's a little bit of a, what can I say? She had some little narcissism traits, about how she looked. And we thought, okay, she's just looking for a little attention here. It'll be okay. Well, it wasn't okay. I mean, he basically was able to move into my mother's house, and then made her think that she couldn't move into this other condo that we bought for her without him. So he moved into the condo. She immediately started giving him her credit cards, and he just took over her life. He isolated the family. He wouldn't let us talk to her, take her out. And it was really horrible. Every time our mother would call us, she would be screaming and yelling, abusing us, kind of being brainwashed by him. And then everything she was saying was stuff that was coming really out of his mouth. And it got really, really ugly, and eventually we had to do an intervention, and we're still in the courts trying to get a permanent restraining order. My mother, thank God, is away from him now. She's in an assisted living. She's being properly taken care of. Her dementia is really, really, really bad. I think a lot of it because it progressed, but also he was giving her things, drugs and so forth, and keeping her up all night and just doing lots of terrible, terrible things. And unfortunately, elder abuse and all these different organizations, really couldn't do anything for us. We had to take the law into our own hands. So we hired an attorney, and it's a horrible story. And I like to share it because it can happen to anybody. And you don't have to just be a elderly woman. I recommend everybody see if they're wondering if they're with a narcissist or a con man, check out the show Dirty John. I don't know if you saw that.
Not yet.
It's a really good example of what a narcissistic, because a lot of these narcissists are con men. So it's a sad story, and affected a whole family. Just like addiction affects not just, them, it affects, many people. And so this toxic person got into our family, and it affected all of us. And it will get better once this restraining order is permanent, but it's been a long road. And I think people need to know about these types of people are out there.
Yeah, that must have been so hard to see your mom get into that scenario, and as bad as it got. I'm so glad that she's out of it, and hopefully maybe her health will improve, or so that's a thank you.
Yeah, it's a weird story to share, but I think it's not my, it wasn't that I attracted him, but my mother did, and my mother was the perfect codependent, vulnerable person, a narcissist.
Right. So let's segue into, for people watching right now who have maybe had an experience like you just, shared about your mom, or they're in an abusive kind of relationship right now. What are some ways that people can heal from narcissistic abuse if they are, this more codependent personality?
Not easy to get away from them. And I want people not to feel ashamed if they stay too long into one of these relationships, because if you're being narcissistically abused, it's just like any domestic violent relationship. There's a cycle of abuse where they're really charming, and then they suddenly build up tension, and they get, then they're not so charming, and then they become abusive, and then they apologize, and then you get sucked back in, or the codependent gets sucked back in. So please, there's a cycle. Do not feel ashamed that you stayed too long or that you're having trouble getting out. There's a reason that they have been, they're a predator, and they've been trying to get you to feel really bad about yourself, to keep you down. So please be kind and loving to yourself. So what you're really going to need is to find a really good licensed psychotherapist like myself, or find a support group, like a 12-step program. There's sex and love addict meetings. There's codependent anonymous meetings. There are a lot of, narcissist Facebook groups, people that have been involved. It's really about educating yourself about, what a narcissist is. But in my case, in this particular lesson, I'm talking about the codependent that is becoming attracted to the narcissist over and over again. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really important to work on your your codependency. I mean, you can have all the education in the world about what a narcissist is, but you've got to, work on yourself from the inside out. So it's very rare for a narcissist to make any efforts to change, but you can change. And, it's a personality disorder, and that prevents them from seeing themselves as anything but superior and justified. But you as the codependent can get support, psychotherapy, 12-step meetings. Psychotherapy and support will typically last for an extended period of time. But, if you're really committed, it doesn't have to take forever, but, you're going to need to make a commitment to yourself so this doesn't happen to you again. It gives you the time to, to reevaluate your misconceptions, your misunderstandings of yourself, to work on your self-esteem, to really understand who the narcissist was and how that happened to you. Really understanding how as a codependent, you probably often get into delusions about who you want someone to be rather than who they really are. So the codependent learns how to have healthy relationship functions, learns coping skills, to get comfortable in their own skin. That's why, I'm so passionate about my Wake Up Recovery program, because it's for people to work on their codependency first and foremost. Mm-hmm. So that they don't go through something like this again. It's a way to find, a way to create new thoughts, to help combat these delusions, these fantasies you have. Codependents tend to have fantasies of what they want someone to be, because if they look at the truth, it's too painful. Like if you look at like, this guy really is awful, but I don't want to be alone, you're not going to look at the truth. And it's a huge issue for many people. So Wake Up Recovery helps them heal parts of themselves that have been unhealed using law of attraction, positive psychology, and mindfulness. I know you're going to give me some time to talk about this, but
yeah, you can segue right into it. So, so everybody watching, there are a couple buttons beneath this video right now that lead over to Sherry's free gift for everybody, as well as this Wake Up Recovery program. So yeah, please share a little bit more so people can get a better understanding of what it is that they'll dive into with your work.
Well, first of all, I just want you to know, again, I can't emphasize enough, no shame. You need a community of support to help you through this if you feel alone. It's so important to start owning all of you, even the parts that are not even feeling very whole right now, parts that you have hidden. There are reasons you became a codependent. And, Andy's other summits have talked about abandonment issues and growing up in an addict home, neglectful home. So there are reasons that you became this way. You didn't wake up one day and go, oh, I want to be a codependent and I just want to attract, quote, assholes. It's just, this is how you were wired. So it's really important to find a way to reparent yourself and give yourself these things that you never received early on, to reevaluate your beliefs about what healthy love might look like. Wake Up Recovery is instrumental in helping you change your faulty belief systems and replace them with healthy thoughts. And it's important for you to learn boundaries. So you're going to learn about boundaries to keep yourself safe from a narcissist, and to learn how to allow people into their space, into your space, who are reliable and not in a relationship only for themselves. So the other really healthy part about Wake Up Recovery is you get into a community of other people that will support you. And, if you're kind of second guessing yourself, they're there to hold your hand through this. So it's really important to boost your self-esteem so you aren't relying on another person to provide you with this sense of worthiness and self-confidence. It all starts with you. It starts with your thoughts about what you put into the universe, what you believe about yourself. And this is going to attract healthy people into your life. And so to me, Wake Up Recovery is a community that's just going to help you attract more healthy people into your life, along with all the tools. It's $1 right now if they join. It's like a trial for $1, which can't beat that. And then there's a quiz to figure out if you are codependent, because I know some of you are, you're on the summit here. What am I trying to say here? Help, Andy.
You may think you're codependent, or you might not be sure, right? Of all the different traits that go along with being codependent, right? Low self-esteem, maybe abandonment issues, attracting that more narcissistic partner, those kinds of things. Or maybe you're a adult child of an alcoholic like myself, and a lot of us tend to be more codependent. So yeah.
Totally. I mean, and what I was going to say is a lot of people on your summit here may not even realize they're codependent. So, the quiz is great just to figure out if that's who you are. Unfortunately, Andy, codependent is still a mysterious word. People still don't understand what it really means. They still believe, it must be that I'm dependent on somebody. It is so much more than that.
Yeah.
And it's a disease that you have to exercise that muscle of recovery for the rest of your life. And that's okay, because it's a wonderful life once you have the recovery.
Yeah. It's so, since I mentioned the adult children of alcoholics, just briefly, it's so much more than that, because when when we did our Overcoming Codependency event a while back that you were on, that was one of the things I learned, right? That was like the origination of that term was in the AA world and stuff. But then, right, it has, so many people are codependent that did not have an alcoholic parent or came from that kind of a scenario. It's something that is so much more widespread than that. So I think that can sometimes be a misconception. So definitely take the quiz if you're even a little bit curious, if you have those kinds of traits. So,
and then join my Facebook group. It's called Codependents Recover. Or if you want to join my Instagram, it's called Codependent Curious, for people that are curious. It's a really big Instagram group. Facebook group is really growing too. And I blog about it all the time. It's funny you mentioned how it's such a misunderstood word. I blog in Psychology Today, so you can find all my free blogs there or on my website. I don't want to give too many links to get you confused. But even Psychology Today wrote me and said, you can't use the word codependency anymore because people don't understand. And
interesting.
I was a little frustrated by that, but it's so misunderstood that they redefine using the word even in their publication. Mm-hmm. So take the quiz and definitely check out the tribe, the Dollar Tribe, and I hope I see you there. And I thank you for giving me a platform to talk about these things, Andy.
Absolutely. We love having you back, and hence this has got to be like number 4 now. So nice to.
Oh, I'm really grateful. You can invite so many other guests, and you keep having me, and I'm very grateful.
Yeah, well, I've always loved connecting with you, and I appreciate that. I appreciate your personal journey and how you always bring that into your conversations, because it's so helpful for people to know that, right, you're not alone. Anyone watching or listening right now, right? We have all had our struggles, and that's why we're doing this. And so awesome. Well, are there any last insights? Anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
I'm just going to say it one more time, and I know I've said it probably way too many times, is be kind to yourself. Have loving kindness and compassion. You did not wake up in this situation falling in love with a narcissist, but there are ways to disconnect and to create healthy relationships. I have a wonderful relationship now with a younger man, may I say.
Woo!
Who would have thought? And I certainly didn't have those beliefs, years ago when I started this journey. So anything's possible. I want people to know that they're not alone, and that there is a healthy life, a healthy love waiting for them.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you, Sherry. You're awesome. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in, for showing up, for being here with us on this event, and being really willing to look at this topic for yourself in your life. And we'll see you again real soon. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Yay!